talk would be lifestyle modifications for correcting hypertension and obesity. We all know that lifestyle modification acts as a medicine and that can correct hypertension and obesity. So what is the hypertension? So hypertension by definition is a blood pressure which is more than 140 millimeters of systolic and more than 90 millimeters of diastolic, taken at two different occasions, and these two different visits should be ideally 1 to 4 weeks apart. So this rules out the white coat hypertension. Or if any patient who is having systolic blood pressure more than 160, diastolic more than 100, he is a candidate for treatment. So this is the definition of hypertension. So now if you see this WHO paper, so they have said that 1.1 billion adults in the world, they are hypertensive, and less than 1 in 5, they have hypertension under control. So in the crowd, we can see all these patients, that person who is standing in front, his BP may be 188, 90, so he is hypertensive, is not under control. The man behind is 177, 102, so he is a hypertensive whose blood pressure is not under control. So if you see hypertension worldwide, in USA, the incidence of hypertension, UK incidence is less, but rather than the incidence, if you compare all three parameters, what is it, how many of them are aware about that hypertension, how many of they are taking treatment of hypertension. So if you see in China, there is prevalence is high, but the treatment part is more. In India, if you see, the awareness, most of the people, they are not aware, and most of the people, they are not under treatment. So we need to make people aware, and we need to treat these patients. So nearly 1/3 of the Indian patients, they have raised blood pressure. Urban is higher than the rural, and out of these 25% rural and 42% urban Indians, they are aware about their hypertension status. But only 25% rural and 38% urban Indians are being treated for their hypertension, and only 1/10 of the rural and 1/5 of the urban population have hypertension under control. So this is only 1/10 and 1/5 population, hypertensive population in India is actually getting their blood pressure properly controlled. So if you see the statewide, I was surprised to see this graph. So the hilly areas like Himachal and Sikkim, they have higher proportion of hypertensive individuals. In fact, I was thinking that the hilly area, they will have lesser incidence. Even the islands like Andaman and Nicobar, they have fairly high percentage of the hypertensive patients, while those Telangana and Mizoram, they have low percentage of the hypertensive individuals. So these were the two studies carried out. I've taken these two studies. One is from Tamil Nadu and the other is from Delhi. Surprising, the study which is from Delhi, if you see that overall there was no improvement in the awareness of the hypertension treatment or control rates of hypertension population when the study was when the data was collected from 1991 to 94 compared to 2010 and 2012. So around almost 20 years back, what was the awareness, treatment, and the control? Nothing has improved, but the prevalence of hypertension has increased. So we have more patients of hypertension, but definitely treatment or control of hypertension is not up to the mark. And most of the Indian hypertension in India, they are not aware and they are not treated. So this is another study which was published in BMJ. So now it shows that less than 11% of the hypertensive patients, they are having their blood pressure under control. So less than 10% hypertensive individuals, they have their hypertension under control. So what are lifestyle modifications for correcting hypertension? We all know that we all give medicines, we try to get blood pressure under control, but lifestyle modification is also an integral part of control of hypertension, and this acts as a medicine. So I have taken these guidelines from this standard treatment guidelines of hypertension from Government of India, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And this is very good document. It is around 150 pages document, but it gives us details about screening, diagnosis, assessment, and management of primary hypertension of adults in India. So what is lifestyle modification? Lifestyle modification is an internal part of the management of the hypertension, regardless of the severity of the hypertension. Like, suppose somebody is grade 1 hypertensive. So it's the only lifestyle modification with only lifestyle modification, we may be able to achieve good blood pressure control. And even for higher grade of hypertension, we still continue having to do lifestyle modifications because it will aid, it will help in control of hypertension and reduce the dosages of the drugs. So lifestyle modification will reduce overall cardiovascular risk in persons with hypertension. So it will not control the hypertension, but it will reduce the cardiovascular risk also. And it's the integral part of the prevention of the hypertension at both individual and at the population level. So here we are not treating only individual, we are treating population also by doing this lifestyle changes. And it may help to prevent progression from high normal blood pressure to hypertension. So it's a primordial prevention, primary prevention, and secondary prevention. So lifestyle modification acts as all this stage of the hypertension. So what are the lifestyle modifications we need to follow for hypertension control? So first is the physical activity, second is the weight control, third is reducing the alcohol consumption, fourth is the tobacco cessation, fifth is a dietary modification, sixth is a reducing salt intake, and seventh is the stress management. Now we'll see each of this in detail. So what is physical activity? Physical activity means daily activity like walking, cycling, any household work or work-related activity or any leisure activity. So all this comes under physical activity. So now what is the moderate physical activity? So moderate intensity physical activity. Moderate intensity physical activity would be any activity which is 30 minutes per day or at least 150 minutes per week. So this 150 minutes per week would be you can divide in the bouts of 10 minutes or 4 to 7 sessions per week. And this is advice for all individual for its cardioprotective. So moderate physical activity, 30 minutes per day, maybe in bouts of 10 minutes is advisable for all individuals. So now what is moderate physical activity? Is the activity which can increase the heart rate, it can make the breathing rapid, and it can make the body warmer. So it could be brisk walking at a pace of 4 to 6 kilometers per hour. It could be stair climbing. It could be light swimming. So 45 minutes accumulated exercise per day is recommended for cardiovascular fitness. So moderate intensity physical activity for every individual is 30 minutes. For cardiovascular fitness is a 45 minutes, and for weight reduction it's a 60 minutes moderate moderate intensity physical activity. This activity should be chosen by the patient, and we should not prescribe this kind of activity. It should be chosen by the patient, and it should be enjoyable and sustainable. We do not have patients doing this moderate intensity physical activity for 10-15 days and then again he's getting fatigued or getting bored of this activity and skipping this activity. So it should be enjoyable and sustainable. Alternatively, a patient can have 75 minutes per week of vigorous physical activity, 150 minutes of moderate physical activity, or 75 minutes per week of vigorous physical activity. It could be 20 to 25 minutes per day for 3 days a week. So now it could be running. Running would be at 9 to 15 kilometers per hour, or cycling at 20 to 25 kilometers per hour. Now this kind of activity makes the breathing very hard. It makes heartbeat rapid, and it makes difficult to carry out conversation. So patient is not able to converse properly. Patient is not able to communicate properly, converse properly. So this is a strenuous physical activity. So it is 75 minutes per week of vigorous activity. All adults should include physical activity to improve muscle strength. Once these adults they achieve this moderate or vigorous physical activity, then after that they should include physical activities to improve muscle strength at least twice a week. So regular aerobic exercise can reduce this systolic blood pressure, average blood pressure from 4 millimeters of mercury to, in some literature they are saying, up to 9 millimeters of mercury, and diastolic blood pressure by 2.5 millimeters of mercury to 5 millimeters of mercury. So definitely there is this is helping to improve the blood pressure control. There is strong physical evidence. There is strong evidence that a regular physical activity has an independent cardioprotective effect also. So what are these cardioprotective effects? So this cardioprotective effect, it will improve the cardiorespiratory fitness. It will lower the systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure. It will improve the insulin sensitivity and glycemic control. It helps to reduce and control weight, and it will lower the markers of inflammation. So all these factors, they will have definite cardioprotective effects. So regular physical activity has got independent cardioprotective effect. Now, if a patient who is chronically sedentary, are we going to advise him moderate physical activity right from the word go, or vigorous physical activity? No. A chronically sedentary individual should not start a program of vigorous physical activity suddenly, but it should be gradual increase in the duration and the intensity of the physical activity. For first day, we'll advise him for 10 minutes of moderate activity per session. Then this will minimize the risk of sudden cardiac event and musculoskeletal injuries. So any patient who experiences chest discomfort, jaw pain, palpitations, syncope, dyspnea should undergo evaluation before continuing the exercise. So exercise should be stopped immediately. He should be evaluated for his cardiovascular status. A patient with decompensated heart failure or acute coronary syndrome should not embark on the exercise program. So there are different sets of program for these kind of patients. So now this diagram, it will tell us about whatever we have discussed. It summarizes it. In the first square, we can see that walking at a conversational pace, like patient is walking, but he is able to converse with us. It is to be done 5 days a week, 10 minutes per session. We can increase this session. If this activity is tolerated, then we can go to second activity. Second will be walking at a conversational space, which is a 5 days a week and 15 minutes per session. So now we have increased the duration of session from 10 minutes to 15 minutes. But it is over a, once the patient tolerates first 10 minute session, then after 4 weeks it is the second activity. If he doesn't tolerate, then again he goes back to the initial program. Then once the patient is able to, or not person is able to tolerate this activity, then he goes on increasing 5 minutes every 2 weeksly. So by the end of 6 to 8 weeks, he achieves 30 minutes per session. He walks at a conversational space 5 days a week. Now, once he tolerates that, then we can start strength training, like 2 days per week muscle training, one set major muscle group, 8 to 12 repetitions per set. Now, again, this is given in a form. It's a moderate activity, aerobic exercises. Then we go to vigorous activity, and once once a person achieves this, then he goes for the resistance training. So resistance training does not come first. It is to be followed after moderate or vigorous physical activities. Now, about the weight reduction. So weight reduction, we have to achieve and maintain the desirable body weight. All individuals who are overweight or obese should be encouraged to lose weight. And what are the tools to lose weight? It is a combination of reduced calorie diet, increased physical activity, and behavioral modification. So all these three things should help a person to reduce weight and to get rid of the obesity. And it should be again sustainable and enjoyable. It should not be a crash diet or crash course of some exercise or something like that, when one has to achieve this target in this stipulated time, and again the patient then doesn't follow after a month or 2 months. So it should be a sustainable thing. So what are the parameters with which we measure the obesity? It's a body mass index. It's a measure of general adiposity. Body mass index is weight in kg divided by height in meter square. So for Indian population, the guidelines are different. For Indian population, BMI between 18.5 to 22.9 is a normal. BMI from 23 to 24.9 is overweight, and more than 25 is obesity. Remember, for Indian population, BMI more than 25 is obesity because we are having less muscle mass compared to the Western population. So any BMI more than 25 is obesity. What is the abdominal obesity? Abdominal obesity is also again associated with high cardiovascular risk. And measurement of waist circumference and the waist hip ratio will tell us about the abdominal obesity. The waist circumference is measured at the end of several consecutive natural breaths. It should not be vigorous breaths, it should be natural breath. From the midpoint between the top of iliac crest and the lower margin of the last palpable rib in the mid-axillary line. So we should connect these points from on the both sides, and we should measure the waist circumference. Again, waist circumference should be less than 90 centimeter for male in India and should be less than 80 centimeter for females. Another parameter is the waist hip ratio. Waist hip ratio is the waist circumference divided by the hip circumference. So hip circumference is measured at the maximum circumference of the buttocks. So normal waist hip ratio is less than 0.85 for women and 0.9 for men. So one should be able to achieve these parameters by doing regular exercise and controlling the diet. About alcohol, reduction of the alcohol consumption. So reducing alcohol intake can lower the blood pressure substantially. Moderate and binge drinking of alcohol increase the blood pressure and risk of developing hypertension. Now, we have to advocate zero alcohol consumption is recommended for women who are pregnant and they're planning to have pregnancy, hypertensives who are already suffering from a complication due to hypertension like stroke or heart disease or renal disease. So, zero alcohol, no alcohol for these individuals. Alcohol consumption is usually measured in terms of units or one standard drink. This is UK guidelines and USA, they measure in this term. But apart from that, if the person who decides to quit but is not able to quit, in those individuals, we ask them to avoid triggers. We ask them to how to deal them with the urges. We should ask them to refuse the drinks politely. Talking and enlisting the support of the spouses, non-drinking friends, and mutual support groups like Alcohol Anonymous, etc., etc. They are very helpful in quitting the alcohol. About tobacco cessation, non-smokers should be encouraged not to start smoking, and all smokers should be encouraged to quit smoking, and it should be supported by the health professional in their effort to do so. So these people, they may get withdrawal symptoms. So in those situations, health professionals should come forward in their help. And these individuals, they should quit smoking, and they should continue quitting smoking. And these patients who use other forms of tobacco should also be motivated to stop doing so. Smoking cessation markedly reduces the overall cardiovascular risk. Like risk of myocardial infarction is 2 to 6 times higher in patients who are exposed to tobacco, and the risk of stroke is 3 times higher in the patients who smoke. A brief advice from healthcare professional is effective in helping persons to quit smoking, increasing the quit rates. Even a 3 to 5 minutes conversation or the encouragement taken for these smokers is an attempt to quit smoking increases the success rate. So health professionals should have empathy towards these patients, and they should spend at least some time in explaining them the importance and the benefits of quitting smoking. So now WHO has recommended 5A approach in aid to smoking cessation. One is ask about smoking status in every opportunity. We should ask them have they quit or have they not quit. Then we should advise them about quitting smoking. Then we should assess his degree of addiction and the readiness to quit. Then we should assist the formulating a smoking cessation strategy, including setting a quit date and counseling and other measures. And we should arrange a follow-up visit. So this 5A approach WHO has recommended for patients quitting smoking. Pharmacotherapy is to stop smoking with nicotine replacement therapy is offered to motivate smokers who fail to quit with counseling. So now this is a 5A approach, WHO 5A approach for quitting smoking. Then what are the dietary modifications for control of hypertension and obesity? So fats, all individuals should be strongly encouraged to reduce total fat and saturated fatty acids. So total fat intake should be less than 30% of the calories. Saturated fat should be less than 10% of the calories. Trans fatty acids or trans fat, we call it, which is present in the bakery product or the products which are having a lot of preservatives in them. They have to be avoided and reduced as much as possible. And most of the dietary fats should be polyunsaturated. Up to 10% of the calories should be from polyunsaturated fatty acids or a monounsaturated fatty acids. And one should avoid saturated fatty acids. Then salt, we should reduce daily salt intake by at least 1/3. Like if somebody is taking 12 grams or 20 grams, then he has to cut down to at least 1/3 of whatever he is taking. And if possible, less than 5 grams salt per day or 90 millimoles of sodium per day. Fruits, vegetables, and fibers, at least 400 grams of a day with different range of fruits and vegetables. And one should include whole grains and pulses in the diet. About the salt intake, again going detail in the salt intake, there is lack of representative data on salt intake in India. We do not know. Different parts of India, they have different consumption of the salt, so we do not have representative data on the salt intake in India. But one of the studies which was done in urban India, the mean salt intake in India was found to be 8.5 grams salt intake per day per person. So it is quite huge amount of salt we are consuming, and majority of this salt is coming from the papads, pickles, achars, and chutneys, etc. So we should counsel people about not adding additional salt in the diet. we should choose food processed without salt. So processed foods, they contain a lot of salt. So processed food preferably should be avoided. Avoiding high salt processed foods, salty snacks, takeaway foods, they are high in salt and salt added during cooking or on the table. They should be cut down. Then preparations which are high in salt content need to be moderated, such as pickles, chutneys, sausages, ketchups, papads, chips, salted biscuits, cheese and salted butter, bakery products, dried salted fish, etc. So salt acts as a preservative in these conditions. So these preparations, they are very high in salt content, so they should be moderated. Then dietary salt restrictions have to be individualized. Certain individuals who are working, who are having intense physical activity under condition of heat stress may lose significant amount of fluid and salt in the sweat. So we do not have any measure of this salt. So they should be individual. The salt intake should be individualized. Exposure to the heat and humid condition. Initially, one starts losing a lot of sodium in the sweat, but after some time, people get acclimatized to this condition. So initially, salt intake can be high, but later on, salt intake can be reduced. So these things has to be individualized. There is no formula for these individuals. And the last part is the stress management. So in hypertensive patients in whom stress may be contributing to blood pressure elevation, stress management should be considered as an intervention. And the recent systematic review and meta-analysis of yoga concluded that there were clinically important effects on cardiovascular disease risk factors, and that yoga should be considered as an ancillary intervention to reduce the cardiovascular risk. But again, this recommendation is not strong enough to use it as a therapy, but definitely there is no harm in subjecting people for yoga and meditation. So if somebody is going for yoga and meditation, we should allow them to do yoga and meditations. So to summarize, these are the lifestyle modification. The target of weight reduction, 10 kg weight reduction, there will be decrease in the blood pressure by 5 to 20 millimeters of mercury. If we adopt DASH eating diet plan, then there will be reduction to 8 to 14 millimeters of mercury in the blood pressure. Reduction in the dietary sodium will reduce blood pressure by 2 to 8 millimeters of mercury. Physical activity will again reduce to 4 to 9 millimeters of mercury, and moderation of alcohol consumption again will reduce the blood pressure. So maximum impact is with diet and a weight reduction. So this is a non-pharmacological treatment approach of the blood pressure control. First step will be avoiding harmful habits, smoking, alcohol, etc. Then second will be reduce salt and high fat diets, lose weight then again and with the exercise, and final will be a DASH diet. So the take-home message is lifestyle modifications like lose weight if you're overweight, increase your physical activity, whatever physical activity you are comfortable, please increase it, do it regularly. Reduce salt intake, stop smoking, limit intake of foods rich in fat and cholesterol, increase consumption of fruits and vegetables. Of course, if the patient is on ACE inhibitor or ARB, before consuming certain types of food, he has to consult his physician and limit alcohol intake. Thank you.